Alright, this is for Taki Chou Chou. Um, the uh, basically the critique is it's a pretty centered image. Um, it's very it's a very bland centered image. Its profile, um, it it's a um, very hmm, the composition is very bland. There's not, and it's not a bad thing. It's just it's a very centered image. There's not really much wrong with the composition, um, beyond that it's centered. I mean, you could always place you want to get more overlap. So what that means is basically, you know, give it a little bit more depth of space type of thing. Um, Everything's straightforward, and I think if you get rid of that straightforwardness, even turn the kid three quarters, I think that'll be helpful. um, but that aside, I think the big thing that you have issues with is that you're using the grayscale method, and when I started out, you're doing the grayscale method, and basically, well, this is your sketch, and the problem with this is you're just doing a color or an overlay above it. And so what's happening, and I'll show you real quick here. So if this is just a color, so what's happening in this layer is if I'm just using red, I'm basically coloring it in like that, and that gives you the red color. So the problem with that, why you shouldn't use that, is because if you notice, all your tonnage is very um, one-sided. And what that basically means is that your your colors range from a dark red, and it goes to a grayscale, and it goes to the white. Like it doesn't really change with any real aspect of coloring, and so that's the big issue. The first problem is that you're using it's not that you're using grayscale, it's that you're not understanding how to use the grayscale. And what I mean by that is, if I think you're doing the overlay, I think that's what you're using. But the problem with that is the overlay works as a black and white scale. So if you're using black in your formula here in your paint job, and it doesn't matter. Like here, I can just keep coloring. And you notice I'm getting that kind of same value, same tone all over the place, and that's your issue. Um, you're you're just coloring your grayscale in and filling in your solid color, and you're done. Now the issue otherwise is your levels. When you do the grayscale, don't go like here. You've got um, just about solid black, and then the lightest value you have is right there, and that's okay. But the problem with that is if your values get too dark. So if I take this and gonna change, actually I'll do it down here. So I'm gonna add levels to it. So this is your black, and if you let's lower your let's adjust your brights like so, and I'm gonna do this while I'm adjusting it. So as you can see, it's starting to change as I get those darks in there. It's not going to be so black. It's not going to be. You don't want that. You don't want the tight value systems. Um, so it's just about adjusting your color, and you can also like take away some of the blacks to get a better value, like gradient value system. And I think that's the big thing that you're not understanding, because in the end, what's happening is you're simply coming out with a lot of solid colors, and you're not realizing that that's only the first implement of colors. When you color in that method, the initial color is not the end result. So what you need to do is you need to decide, one, on your light source, two, add some of your color from your sky into your shadows. So in this case, what I would do is I would create a new layer, and with these darks here, I'm going to add this blue sky in there, and then you can add either, I mean, you can add a overlay, and it doesn't do much, but just by simply adding those blues in there, you're going to unify that aspect. So I'm going to just adjust this layer to just be a little bit brighter so you can see the results. So now with these blues in here, you can get, oops, I don't want to do that layer. So with these blues in here, you can start getting much better shadows, cleaner colors, and things like that with the blue as a background or as a shadow color. So things like that are going to help you out. The other thing is you have two light sources, I should say. You have this one from the background here, and you have the moon. And the problem with the moon is, here's what I would do. I would let's see here. What I would do is I would take this child or samurai here, and I would add in your colors that you want, right? And then what I would do is, the problem is you've got this moon, and it's, blaring color. Give it some color. Give it some, your red is your saturated tones, and I think if you take your saturated tones and add some of that yellow, and then go back in and let's create a new layer and go back in and give me the brights of that moon hitting on the shadows, and that's going to really pop. I'd probably not do it there, but that's really going to pop the moonlight out and give you a little bit more dimension. And then you can add in a little bit of that yellow. Now that's a little bit too much, but you can add in some of that yellow here and there to give it that moonlight effect, and your light source now changes a little bit more. We can even do like a soft light and just add, oops, not that color. We can do like a soft light, and you can add that yellow color in there. And then that'll also kind of silhouette these guys a little bit better. And that is going to help you out. Now, the other light source, if you're using a white light source, that won't be, a white light source is not prevalent at this time. You had fire, and fire is yellow-orange. So you want to get those those oranges and reds in the light source. So you really need to decide on what your light source needs to be, and I think that's the other issue you have, because you've put the moon up here as a light source, and then you've put a secondary light source in the background. So if you want more authentic, add in those reds, those yellows, and oranges. The other thing too is, if you get your saturation colors in there, like your blues, it's going to make everything in the reds pop a little bit more. So, like I said, this is not, your initial overpass is not the first and foremost. You need to have, those secondary overpasses. Now, I would also consider like starting to erase some of this out, and putting in, stuff like this. And by doing this, I'm darkening, like things like that. And so that's adding a lot more contrast and flavor in there. The other thing is where your shadow's coming from. If this is light moon, I would have this medium blue, maybe I'd have some sort of shadow like going this way, So those are things that you really need to add. Um, I think your idea is okay. I think the problem is you didn't think about the lighting, and you kind of started drawing it's kind of apparent. You started drawing from this, and then from there, what you did was you added in, your base color, and then you decide, oh, well, I'm going to add in this other stuff. Plan your composition a little bit better, so that when it comes down to understanding your light source and all that other stuff, um, you want to ask yourself, where's the lighting coming from? In this case, it's coming from the back, so it's called backlight, and you need to get examples of backlight, or even take the photo reference yourself. Um, so that's something that I would definitely look at. The other thing is, when you're, and this is just something I notice now, you're kind of using it's like a photo for the background. Don't do that. Um, you can get a cloud brush, you can make your own clouds, but when you're doing an all digital painting and then you dump in a photo in the background, it tends to kind of look really just off. It's just, especially if the painting that you dump in isn't photograph quality. So that's another thing that you really kind of want to look at, is getting that in there. So that's a big thing, is paying attention to your light source, paying attention to that. Also, don't use these type of brushes for the grass. It tends to look really cheesy, because the brush itself isn't really manipulated. If you want grass in there, honestly, the easiest way to do it is just a couple strands here, a couple strands there. You can go in and kind of play with colors and stuff like that, and then you can add some thick pieces and bend them up, and get some depth in there. But don't just use the simple brush. Kind of get in there, and I'm not sure if it's a brush or not. It looks like this brush, right? I find my plants here. It looks like this brush here, which is just a small brush, and if you look from what yours looks like, you've just got more of your shape dynamics, spread your spacing here. So the issue is, oops, I want to take my color dynamics off. So the issue with this is if you're doing this, then you want to add in, just a couple passes. Don't something like this, that type of thing, and like so. And that looks a lot better when you're doing your stuff. If you just thicken it up a little bit and give it a little bit more depth. But so something like this. And here's your bright highlights. So I would have, like I said, I would have gone that route, and I think that's a better route. Getting in more of your colors, your shadows, oops, not on the right layer for that, but more of your colors and more of your shadows on the multiply layer. Get that in there, and that'll help you separate things. Also, stay away from those solid whites. If you're going to add white, it should be on your own, not on uh, not on the grayscale level. So, these highlights, that's telling you that there's a bright light. I mean, a really bright light in there. So if you're adding those highlights, that means that's just a huge aspect of, there's something very bright. But if it's a matte filter, like so, and then you want to add in your darker colors, like this, and that's going to be a lot better. All right, I hope that helps.